We begin with a story out of Myanmar. A protester who was shot in the head during an anti-coup demonstration died on Friday. The victim is the first protester to be killed since the February 1st coup. The death is expected to prompt even more intense opposition to the military's takeover. Mya Twe Twe Kine, 20, was shot in the head at a rally in the capital Naypyidaw on February 9th. She was unconscious and in critical condition since then.
Her situation was getting worse starting a few days ago, and she passed away at 11 a.m. Everyone, please participate in protests until we succeed.
Local media say police were firing at demonstrators when the woman was shot. Hospital officials told NHK that the bullet must have been a live round as it penetrated her helmet. Protests against the coup show no sign of easing more than 2 weeks on, with people continuing to call for the release of ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi. In the largest city, Yangon, hundreds of people gathered at a main road in the city, while police sealed off the site by setting up barricades. Protesters blocked traffic by throwing fruit and dismantling bicycles as part of a civil disobedience campaign. Turning to developments in U.S.-Iran relations, the administration of U.S. President Joe Biden is sending a message it wants to open lines of communication with Tehran, but Iran's foreign minister says the U.S. should lift all sanctions against Tehran before discussing a possible return to the Iran nuclear agreement. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken indicated on Thursday that Washington is ready to discuss returning to the 2015 deal, from which former President Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew. Blinken disclosed this in a video conference with his counterparts from Britain, France, and Germany. They're the parties to the deal that restricts Iran's nuclear activities. In a tweet posted on Friday, Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif responded to the U.S. move, but demanded that the U.S. unconditionally and effectively lift all sanctions imposed, reimposed, or relabeled by Trump. Iran is stepping up uranium enrichment activities as a countermeasure to the sanctions. Zarif tweeted that if the U.S. lifts its sanctions, Iran will then immediately reverse all remedial measures. Tehran has also reiterated that the deal was signed after years of negotiations, adding that it won't agree to hold talks that would add new items to the deal, such as restricting ballistic missile development. Japan's health minister says the government will try to secure more vaccines as soon as possible, as the number of healthcare workers hoping to get inoculated proved to be more than estimated. Japan rolled out its vaccination campaign on Wednesday, with about 40,000 medical workers receiving the jab in the first phase. The inoculation will be eventually expanded to other healthcare workers. The government had estimated about 3.7 million people would be lining up, but the ministry's survey found that an extra million hope to get the vaccine.
If medical workers are eager to get vaccinated, that will help ease any public anxiety about receiving vaccines.
Tamura said the government will try to secure enough doses to cover the increased demand so the vaccination schedule won't be affected. After healthcare workers, the elderly will be next, potentially as early as April. And for foreigners who don't speak Japanese, officials in some municipalities are preparing to provide multilingual services at inoculation centers. Volunteer interpreters will be stationed at a venue in Yamato City near Tokyo to provide assistance in 20 languages.
We want to ensure that both Japanese and non-Japanese residents can be vaccinated without worry.
Tokyo and 3 of its neighboring prefectures have been under a state of emergency for the past 6 weeks. The number of new infections has been on the decline, but its pace has slowed.
If people lower their guard and start doing what they have been refraining from doing, that could ultimately lead to a fourth wave of infection.
Reproductive rates in Tokyo and all other prefectures currently under the state of emergency are all below 1. The R value is a figure referring to the average number of people that one infected person will go on to infect. If it's higher than 1, the number of cases increases, but if it's lower, the virus will eventually stop spreading.
The rate was declining, but it has been rising a bit recently. The trend continues, and that could be an ominous sign. It would be difficult to lift the state of emergency declaration if we only maintain the current status.
The declaration will be in effect until March 7th, but the government plans to lift it early for areas where the situation has improved. Across Japan, health authorities reported more than 1,300 new cases on Friday, with 66 deaths. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says life expectancy for Americans fell by 1 year during the first half of 2020. That's the biggest decline since World War II, and experts say it's mainly due to the coronavirus pandemic. The CDC released provisional life expectancy estimates for January through June last year on Thursday. The report says life expectancy at birth for the entire U.S. population stood at 77.8 years, decreasing by 1 year from 2019. One official said it was a huge decline on a scale not seen since the 1940s.
I would say that the pandemic accounts for the vast majority of the decline. I mean, we are seeing increases in drug overdose deaths as well during the pandemic, and so that, of course, is a factor.
The report also highlights the disparity between races. Life expectancy shrank by 0.8 years for white Americans and 1.9 years for Hispanics. The decline was 2.7 years for black Americans. The report says that life expectancy for all of 2020 may decline further as coronavirus infections surged in the second half of the year. The new head of the organizing committee for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics and Paralympics has set out her vision for the role on her first day in the job. Hashimoto Seiko expressed her determination to combat the coronavirus and hold the games, which are due to start in 5 months.
My biggest mission is to restore the public's trust and work together with the central and Tokyo metropolitan governments to deal with the coronavirus properly and make sure the games are safe.
Hashimoto replaced the former Tokyo Games chief, who resigned after making seemingly sexist remarks that unleashed a domestic and international backlash. She addressed about 3,600 members of the organizing committee staff on Friday. She also met with Tokyo Governor Koike Yuriko, and they agreed that they'll work together to implement measures against the coronavirus. Koike said they have to consider practically how the games will be held given the situation. Before the meeting, Hashimoto resigned as member of the main ruling Liberal Democratic Party to demonstrate her political neutrality. The chief executive officer of the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee welcomed Hashimoto's appointment in a tweet. Sarah Hirshland said the Tokyo Games now have an incredible opportunity to be a powerful force for friendship and global celebration in truly unprecedented times. Now to a prominent ruling on the 2011 triple meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. A high court has ruled that the state, as well as the plant operator, are responsible for the accident and ordered a payout of about $2.6 million.
I'm surprised to see that the ruling gives hope to our children and grandchildren, but the lawsuit is not over yet. It will still go on.
The decision reversed a lower court ruling in 2017 that held only the plant's operator, Tokyo Electric Power Company, accountable. In Friday's ruling, the judge stressed that the government could have foreseen the risk of a massive tsunami if it had studied a long-term assessment of seismic activities released by a panel of experts in 2002. The judge said if the plant was equipped with tidal barriers or other anti-tsunami measures, it would not have suffered a power blackout, which led to the meltdowns. The judge also said the plaintiffs should be compensated for enduring major changes in their livelihoods. He noted the trauma of being forced to choose either to give up their hometowns or to aim for a return while living temporarily elsewhere. Friday's ruling was the third made by a high court in response to lawsuits filed by groups of evacuees, and the second one that found the central government liable. Tokyo Electric Power Company said that it'll look closely at the ruling and decide on its response. The Nuclear Regulation Authority said it'll implement appropriate regulations by strictly examining the new regulatory standards formulated based on the accident. People in the Philippines are bracing for the arrival of this year's first tropical storm. Our meteorologist Sayaka Mori has more on the possible impacts.
Hello there. Tropical Storm Dujen is the first named storm for the Northern Hemisphere. This system is projected to make landfall in the Philippines. This is a very slow-moving storm, so the impacts will last long and the precipitation amounts will be staggering. It is expected to pound parts of Mindanao or the southern Visayas by Sunday afternoon local time, and then it will continue to head towards the northwest. It could even batter the Manila region directly, so a lot of heavy rain is expected for many places of the Philippines from the south and to the north. Meanwhile, weather is going to be unusually warm during the weekend into next week. In fact, Tokyo could see a high of 22 degrees on Monday. Warm air will continue to move in from the south and west. Tokyo's high will be 22 on Monday. That's more like early May. Osaka will see 21 on Monday. Kagoshima, which saw snow on Thursday, it was the heaviest snowfall for February in 16 years or so. But you'll see 20 degrees on Saturday. It could even go up to 23 on Monday. Instead of snow, northern Japan could see rain, so be careful of avalanches. Meanwhile, very cold weather has been gripping many places of the United States. That includes the southern areas. Take a look at this video. The winter storms have led to the loss of power for millions of residents in Texas. Power is restoring. However, many have also lost access to water. Dozens of people have died due to weather-related causes. Authorities say the worst of the storm is over, but freezing temperatures continued on Friday. But a big change is on the way into the weekend and into next week. The cold air will finally move away from the southern plains, so temperatures will be in the double digits in many places. Oklahoma City saw minus 25 degrees earlier this week, but a huge change is on the way, especially on your Tuesday. That's it from me. Stay safe.
In Myanmar, people honored a young woman who died Friday after being shot by security forces last week. She was shot while protesting the military takeover of the government. China said for the first time that 4 Chinese soldiers were killed during a clash with Indian troops in the Himalaya Mountains in June 2020. Government forces in Somalia fire on hundreds demonstrating against a delay in the country's elections. And one of Senegal's top horse riders, 19-year-old Fallou Diop, prepares to fulfill a lifelong dream of racing horses in France.
US President Joe Biden has declared the transatlantic alliance is back in a speech seeking to re-establish the United States as leader of the West against what he called a global assault on democracy. The G7 group of developed nations has promised billions of dollars to the UN's COVAX fund to immunize the world against coronavirus. The German Chancellor said the pandemic would be conquered only when everyone on Earth is vaccinated. The US has officially rejoined the international effort to tackle climate change, known as the Paris Climate Agreement. It's a major shift from the approach of former President Trump, who withdrew the US from the landmark accord, claiming at the time that the country had been given a bad deal. And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been stripped of their honorary appointments after confirming to the Queen that they will not return as working members of the royal family.